The year is 1832. Thomas Dartmouth Rice enters stage with a face full of black grease paint. He introduces his brand new blackface character, Jim Crow. Thus begins the reign of America's only indigenous entertainment form, the minstrel show.
I didn't mean to say, but there I saw so many gals I couldn't get away. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about I jump Jim Crow.
Hello, my name is Maud, aka the Dainty Funk, your resident poet clown, and clowns are still racist. I made a video like 10 months ago called Clowns Are Racist, and in it I go through all of the clown archetypes and talk about what I perceived to be racial caricatures within those archetypes. The response to that video was overwhelmingly positive. Most people was like, no, you're right and you should say it. Like, I get where you're coming from. The big lips, the afro hair, the big feet, it's making sense. And some people weren't amenable to me saying that the big show was full of bigotry. So, to be honest, I didn't really do the best job of presenting accurate information in the video. I didn't think a lot of people were going to see it. I was figuring out clown stuff myself, so a lot of the information that I present, the dates are kind of mixed up. Some of the countries that I talked about weren't correct. So as my return back to YouTube, I wanted to redo that video and give a bit more contextualization, a bit more history, and make you all believe that I am the smartest person alive. Before we get started, I do have a Patreon where I posted this video already, as well as a more in-depth look into the articles that I used for this video. I also post unreleased poems on there, and I post Instagram pictures before anyone else can see them. So if that interests you, please, please, please help me out. It's hard out here in the pandemonium. All right, let's get into it. Prior to the circus, there weren't a lot of large theater events happening. You had blood sports, where people would watch big animals fight to the death, and the opera. Those were the two options. As you can imagine, there wasn't an overlapping audience. People who liked to see animals eat each other, and people who listened to ear-splitting operatic sounds, they really weren't mingling and going to the same spaces. And then in 1760s London, Philip Astley creates the riding school. He was an equestrian. He would do flips and tricks and unimaginable things with horses that no one had ever seen before. A quote from one of the London newspapers that came out during this time says, "Astley and his riding partner, Lambeth Marsh, would ride two horses together, with one foot in each saddle, firing pistols, leaping into the air and demonstrating the manner of Elliott's charge against the French troops in Germany in the year 1761. It's giving show. The bitches were into it. They came out in droves just to see Mr. Astley and Mr. Marsh jump on some horses. A couple months into garnering more of an audience, they started to add more acts to the show, including the tailor riding to Brentford. This was a comedy act where they would have one of the members of the riding school tragically mount a horse. He would trip and fall and mount the horse with absolutely no swag, and then once he got onto the horse wouldn't go anywhere. And it was a hit. People loved that shit. I would consider that to be one of the first instances of incorporating the clown into circus culture. Some may say the clown existed long before the circus. In ancient Egypt, there are records of jesters, which were servants that were in charge of entertaining people, often with gags and comedy. After the jester came the Harley Quinn, the light-hearted, nimble, astute servant that often acted to thwart the plans of his or her master in very hilarious ways. The more foolish and bumbling clown that we know today wasn't officially known as such until the 1800s. In Clowns and Pantomimes, Maurice Willson says, "Separating the joke from the clown is indeed rather like cutting neither less nor more than a pound of his spirit. What he does or what happens to him, if it arouses any feeling at all, is funny because of his irresponsibility and the thickness of his hide are advertised." If the clown is the act that people laugh at, or the clown is the person that causes people to laugh, then I think the Taylor writing to Brentford was the first incorporation of that kind of vibe into the circus. As the years went on, they had horsemanship and comedy and burlesque, trained animals and gymnasts and contortionists, and that was a couple decades before people would start calling it the circus or the big show. After the American Revolution in 1783, circus tents started to pop up pretty naturally in like 2 years after colonists started to settle into the Americas. Between the 1780s and well into the 1800s, you have the era of the circus, where the big show and the circus were one of the most prominent forms of en masse entertainment in the Western world.
Let that be a lesson to you.
What's the matter with you boys shooting up that man's hen house?
I'll shoot any chicken trying to follow me home.
Just like the clown, Blackface existed well before minstrelsy in the United States. Othello in Shakespeare's Othello is described as having dark skin. Shakespeare often did this in his stories to subvert the expectations of his fellow Englishmen. The association with dark skin in plays at the time was villains, evil, the devil. They would put wiry wigs and blackface and other garments to denote blackness in order to show like evildoers in their plays. And Shakespeare would often use that assumption to subvert the expectations of his audience by making the villain the white character in the story. The actors would paint their face white to be seen from far away by audience members, but also to separate them from the audience members and enter the space of the play, which seems to be a overarching theme in painting one's face. The idea of putting on a mask and entering a role is pretty present in both the circus and minstrelsy. In the 1700s, The Padlock, a story about a North African servant who was very rambunctious and loud and just wanted to be free, seemed to be the first iteration of minstrelsy, where white actors would caricaturize and bastardize the image of African peoples by mimicking them, their movements, their speech, all that. But the first phase of minstrelsy began in the Americas in the 1800s among low-class white youth in the North. A lot of people assume that the blackface caricature was actually created by Southerners, but it was Northern whites who used the image of the happy-go-lucky slave to absolve themselves of the guilt of upholding slavery that created the kind of minstrel show proper. Music was a really, really important aspect of minstrelsy. Prior to minstrel shows becoming super popular in the Americas, the only kinds of music that were really popular were operatic music and classical music. There weren't a lot of other options for people to listen to. And minstrel music, to white Northerners who had been hardened by the industrial factories of the cities was this idealized version of twang and lemonade in the South. It also served as this rebellion to more highfalutin music. White men who enjoyed minstrel shows at the time often did this to piss rich white people off. After blackface became super popular in the American imagination, blackface clowns began to pop up within the circus, and by the 1820s, they were the norm. If the purpose of the clown is to be laughed at or to make people laugh, then the blackface minstrel was but another form of the clown. And today, the wide white or red mouth that we see is a remnant of the blackface mask. In many ways, the circus was the stepping stone for minstrelsy to be born, and you can see that minstrel shows and minstrel troupes also had very similar vibes to the circus. The blackface mask was a clown's disguise, exaggerating the facial features into a cartoon, a caricature. The social function of the clown as an outsider, an other, a creature of difference, who in 19th century's America was more of an other than the Negro. I think that gives a lot of insight as to why blackface became so popular amongst these poorer communities. But we can't forget that after emancipation, when poor white people were threatened by the possibility that there would no longer be an entire class of people below them, the minstrel show shot up in popularity and denoted more explicitly and overtly racist themes. But the performer that created the first wave of popularity in minstrel shows was Thomas Dartmouth Rice. In 1832, he presented his first blackface character, Jim Crow. At the same time, he put out the song Jump Jim Crow, which topped the charts of the Western world for months. After he performed, the minstrel show became the first fully American form of mass entertainment. This ushers in the era of the minstrel troupe, which started out as a four-man band wearing blackface masks and again mimicking the caricatures of how they believed Southern black slaves to be in the South. By the mid-1850s, they had troupes so large that, similar to the circus, they would do a parade before their performances to their performance spot. I got a lot of this information from the book Black Like You, Blackface, Whiteface, Insult and Imitation in American Popular Culture, and in it, the author implies that the act of minstrelsy wasn't racist and rather a longing for a place for poor northern whites to belong to. And I struggled with that conclusion. I think it implies that white northerners and black slaves were participating in the same way and had the same opportunity for minstrelsy, that both white Americans and black Americans were doing minstrelsy equally, when the participation of black people in minstrelsy was purely because that was their only option. And the people who profited off of minstrelsy were largely white people anyway. Many white American men who became famous on minstrelsy and told the masses that they came up with their songs on their own, or they drove past a plantation to hear the sounds of slaves working happily in the fields, were later on revealed to have been lying. Many black people came out and said that, no, like, we taught him this song that we used to sing all of the time when we were slaves. Removing racism from minstrel shows is not productive. It can be multiple things at once. It can be something that denoted youth culture in the 1800s, while also being a very egregious, racist form of theater. All right, that was a lot of information, but I wanted to contextualize it and give you all my thoughts on the situation. A lot of people asked me in my original video, how can I not be racist? How can I participate in clowning and not be racist? The short answer is, I don't know. I want to challenge, especially my white viewers, not to feel comfortable asking me those types of questions. I am presenting the information to you, and you have to do the work to be anti-racist. It is not my job, nor is it my responsibility. And it can be very tiring for me to be experiencing racism while at the same time being asked to help you not be racist. That being said, there are aspects of the blackface mask that trickle down into what the clown looks like today. So maybe avoid the big lips, avoid the afro hair, the big feet. I know that the hobo clown was explicitly used to make fun of homeless, enslaved Black people after the emancipation. Like, maybe don't do that in terms of how to be completely anti-racist in America. I don't think you can. At the end of the day, most things in this country are racist. It is simply a matter of how we decide to respond to them and what you do in your everyday life to uplift Black people. So, yeah. Oof, I've been talking forever. I hope you all liked the video. I hope it was better than the last one. I think it was. I'm pretty proud of myself. If you got to the end of this video, I know it was long. Thank you for sticking by me and watching to the end. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this, please like, comment, subscribe. If you have any suggestions for videos that you would like to see, comment down below. Please, possibly nothing to do with racism. I need a break. Thanks for watching. Stay weird.